Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
What's happening? Welcome to another edition of the Coach Catalyst Podcast, Season 2. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer, and on today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jason Curtis. Now, this was definitely an episode that we would call Battle of the Beards, and I think Jason took the cake with this one. Now, Jason is my brother from across the pond, and he has a really interesting story. So he built a gym from scratch, which was no easy feat. And we go through that entire. And what's even more unique is he has kind of branched his business into multiple different revenue streams where he has the gym, but he also has some continuing education that he provides for coaches. And then he has this new adventure race that he's just created called the Deadly Dozen. So you're going to have to listen to the episode to see how it all shakes out. But this is going to be a fun one, especially if you're in the gym business. So I'll catch you on the flip side. I hope you enjoy this episode with Jason Curtis. Jason, welcome to the Coach Catalyst Podcast.
Hi.
Man, it's really good to talk and catch up. And you do a lot of things. So the question I want to ask you to start off is, if you're at a cocktail party or you're at a party, how do you introduce yourself?
Sort of like an elevator pitch, basically.
Well, I mean, like, are you a strength coach? Are you a race developer? Are you an instructor? Like, what would be the first thing that you might tell someone?
I would say I was a strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, first things first. Yeah, definitely. I definitely see myself first of all as a coach, and that's how I sort of go from there.
So has like strength and conditioning always been a passion of yours? Is it something that you got into really early on and then just kind of grew to love, or was it a passion that came later in life?
I was quite fortunate really that I did a lot of combat sports as a kid. So I always knew that I was into the physical training side of things. And I was also quite young when I knew I wanted to join the military. And obviously I wasn't aware of the strength and conditioning is quite, it's more well known now, but it's quite a niche sort of term in terms of the physical development of athletes. So I wasn't necessarily aware of, what S&C was, but I was aware from quite a very young age that I was really interested in physical training, and how to get fitter. So when I did Thai boxing, I was really into the sport. I was never going to be brilliant. I was all right at it. But I was more into sort of how I got fit, the physical training behind the martial arts and the boxing that I did. So I really enjoyed the circuits. I really enjoyed the running training, the interval training. So I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be, essentially a fitness coach. And I eventually learned that I wanted to be a physical training instructor in the Army. And that's what really sort of took me on the journey.
And so how many years ago was this?
This was when I started thinking about joining the Army and fitness.
Yeah.
This was when I was like 8 or 9, 10. I was young. As a child, I was training quite hard, training regularly, training every day.
Right.
And, I knew I wanted to join the military, and I ended up joining the military at 19.
Okay.
And that's when the real career started.
And so like fitness coach is kind of a newer, especially to like the general population, is not like a profession that's been around for a really, really long time. And so kind of when you said fitness coach at that age, was there really a path to becoming a fitness coach, or really was kind of the Army maybe connecting? You love the combat aspect and you also were really into fitness, and that was maybe a path to kind of scratching that itch to an extent?
Yeah. So I didn't know. I wouldn't have known at that age what a personal trainer was,
right,
or what I had in my head that I would have some sort of combat gym, so a gym that had a lot of boxers and fighters in there. You'd be hitting the bags, you'd be doing circuit training, and obviously some form of weight training. But at that point, I wasn't doing any weights really. We had bits and bobs that we'd use. But I also knew I wanted to join the military, and I was aware that I wanted to join the infantry, because the way I saw it was, if you're going to join the Army, if you watch a film about the Army, the people you see are the soldiers, the ones that are fighting on the front line. So I knew I wanted to do that. And I'm not sure at what point, but I knew you could be a physical training instructor in the army. So you could be the guy that trains everyone. So to me, that came across as my dream job, being in the army and being a physical training instructor. And then my goal, which, was from a very young age, was to then either stay, I don't know how long I wanted to stay in the army, but to then go and have my own gym. And because I was doing a lot of combat sports like boxing at the time, I perceived that as being more of a boxing gym. And a lot of the gyms that I had trained in, they had little weight rooms. Like a lot of boxing gyms would have a little bench press, with the 1-inch barbells and dips and, dip bars and pull-up bars and stuff like that. So it definitely wasn't S&C. And I didn't know the context of S&C. But I did have coaches around me that would talk to me about, I always remember one of my coaches said to me, one of the best ways to get fit is rowing. So I ended up having, my dad bought me an old rowing machine, so I was sort of thinking about training outside of just the sports I was doing. I wasn't aware of the sort of technical terminology, but I was becoming aware from quite a young age, that there was a sort of separate physical training side to the entire industry where you're the guy that trains people.
So how long were you in the military then and doing that training?
Just 6 years. So I joined the infantry, and then within a year, because you can't join as a physical training instructor in the army in the UK, I'm not sure if you can in the States. And then I became a physical training instructor, still an infantry soldier. Did that role for about 5 or 6 years. The final 2.5 years, I trained infantry recruits at Carrick. And it was during my time in the infantry when I started reading a lot, started collecting sort of strength and conditioning manuals, strength manuals, all the Russian stuff from sort of various American strength and conditioning coaches all over the world. So I was reading a lot, wasn't watching as much YouTube because I didn't have a laptop at the time. We didn't really, you have phones, but it wasn't like it is today where you just watch YouTube all the time on your phone. But I did I remember watching a lot of the old, what I remember as being the YouTubers that I watched. So I was just developing my knowledge of S&C. Unfortunately, in the army, they give you a little bit of funding to go do courses. So I did all my personal training courses, sports therapy courses, like massage therapy. I did all that sort of stuff whilst volunteering at various places and just upskilling myself ready to leave the army, basically. Because I knew after so many years, I don't want to stay in the army and become a sergeant major and whatnot. I want to go and do my own thing.
Right.
And that was the plan really toward the end, the last 2 or 3 years.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
One of the things I love most about Coach Catalyst.
There are lots of things I love about Coach Catalyst.
And the reason why I love Coach Catalyst is that
the accountability off the back of that
is simplicity.
The support is amazing.
It allows me to give so much of me to my clients.
It's the drip feeding of content.
I can schedule lessons for my clients in advance.
Game changer for freeing up time.
It gives me my time back.
It's so simple and so easy.
Hi, I'm Kane, the founder of Coach Catalyst, the #1 accountability and communication software on the market today. We help coaches just like you keep their clients accountable and scale their business beyond what they've ever been able to do before. So if that sounds like something you want, let's take a look at how we can help. So Coach Catalyst was built on the 4 C's of coaching. Those are content, communication, community, and consistency. So for content, you need to go beyond just workouts and deliver the whole experience for the client so they get the results they deserve. For communication, you need to own your communication. If you don't own the communication, you don't own the client. So make sure you stop texting clients and use a centralized platform. For communities, get off of Facebook groups and take ownership over your social group with Coach Catalyst communities. And for consistency, the foundation of all results for clients, we took the best-selling book Atomic Habits and built all of these fundamentals right within our app that's going to guarantee to get your clients the best results possible. If you want to start using the 4 C's with your clients, content, connection, community, and consistency, make sure you run over to Coach Catalyst and start a free trial today.
So your early education in strength conditioning, obviously there was a lot of application early on just doing it. But then in the Army, my guess is you had a little bit of formal education where they were kind of training you on becoming a physical instructor in the Army. Is that accurate?
Yes. So the way it works in the British Army is you can be, say, an infantry soldier. Obviously, you've got the other corps as well, like so you have engineers and whatnot. But so I was in the infantry. You do fitness every morning, and you do that with a physical training instructor who's one of your peers that has done the PTI course. And the PTI course is a 10-week course where you learn what you would learn on a personal training course, but also adapted for the military role. So you learn a lot more about obstacle course training. You learn a lot more about sort of taking a body of men on a run. So obviously in Civvy Street, as we called it, you might go for a run with a client, but more often than not, you're working in the gym. In the military, you might be taking 50, 60 blokes. I say blokes because in the infantry at the time, it was only men. You're taking all them guys on a run. You're running circuit sessions for, could be 100 people. So you're doing more military style physical training, like stuff like battle PT. So battle PT is like stretcher runs, log races, stuff like that. So it's actually a really, really good course. I absolutely loved it. And you just spend 10 weeks going through all the theory, doing lessons with the PTs, but also within your group, you just run back-to-back sessions. So if I had to run a circuit session that day, I would run that. But then if the 8 other guys within my section needed to run, one was running a circuit session, one was running a 5-mile run, one was doing a track session, one was doing an obstacle session, you'd have to be like the guinea pig, the student on that session. So you spend 10 weeks just doing like back-to-back sessions all day.
Right.
So you gain a humongous amount of experience, and obviously seeing everyone coach, and concurrently they're just having you in doing PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. Definitely one of the best times I had in the military. And then aside from that, I was obviously just doing courses outside the military that they'd then go and send me on.
Right. So I don't know how it is in the UK versus the US, but sometimes like physical training in the military, many times lags behind what we're maybe doing in the call it consumer world, right? Like they're a little more resistance to change, and we're going to kind of do things the way we've always done things. And so did you see a discrepancy in maybe how like you were training people in the military versus you're learning kind of general population strength conditioning from other modalities? Did you see a difference?
Yeah, so there was initially a massive difference, but there's also an element of what you can do. If I get, say, a platoon of 50 guys, is it effective for me, for example, to take them guys into a gym with a load of barbells and racks and take them through like back squat, front squat, deadlift? There's far more complexity to that than if I took them in and took them through like circuit training that involves goblet squats, shuttles, various different things. So there was a level of what you can do logistically with the recruits. So, and also what's the backbone of the military is like marching and running and stuff like that. But yeah, towards the end though, there was a massive shift, and that was definitely brought in by, various PTs that were, gaining rank and influence in the military, but had a good background. CrossFit was getting bigger. So more and more people were getting exposed to barbell training, Olympic weightlifting. So it was, in my sort of 6 years as an Army physical training instructor, I would say the first 3 to 4 were very old school. And then the last sort of 3 years, you started seeing the gyms transform. So every camp had its own gym, and they started to get big racks. It was it almost correlated to when, you've seen like Rogue and CrossFit getting these big rigs. It sort of came together like that, where you started to see these rigs were becoming more popular in commercial gyms, and they were also getting installed into military gyms. So rather than it just being like a lot of military gyms you'd have a gymnasium with a massive open space for like circuit training and whatnot. And then you'd have like a little weight section that was all machines and a rack. You might have one squat rack, and then you'd have all the cardio machines. And that was how they were built. And then it slowly started to shift to have like massive rigs where they had multiple racks with barbells. You had lifting platforms, you had sleds. So it definitely took that shift. And I saw that in the last, definitely 2 to 3 years. So we started to sort of not just keep up with the civilian or the consumer fitness industry, but I'd say in some ways it was pushing even further, and there was a real level of expertise. But definitely there's a lot of what holds it back is not just resistance to change. It's also you've got 50 young lads that have joined the infantry, and you need to get them fit over so many months. Yes, we know that the foundation of injury prevention a lot of time is to develop strength. It's important for the bones, it's important for the muscles, but also you've got a load of lads that might have never been exposed to training in a gym, and that PTI is responsible of getting them fit and ready to join their battalion. That there had to be a massive change of the program to then incorporate, say, barbell strength training for so many weeks prior to going into sort of a more intense running and marching regime.
Mm-hmm. Just curious. I mean, and maybe there's data on this, maybe there's not. Did you guys see any change in like injuries or that kind of stuff as you kind of shifted the training modalities?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously I've been out quite a few years now, but I know a lot of the coaches that were very heavily involved in this. And they definitely see massive increases in performance from sort of having an initial shift towards strength training, just to ensure that the recruits were resilient enough to handle the stresses of running and marching. So there's stats that you hear from like Civvy Street where 80% of runners are injured as a result of running, and more often than not, it's load management. When it comes to any training modality, whether it be running, rowing, lifting weights, Olympic weightlifting, it's all about managing the load. So the frequency, intensity, and the volume of what you're doing. More often than not, people put the emphasis on technique when more emphasis needs to be put on, are you doing too much? Is it too much volume or is it too much intensity? And so you can create a program of running and marching that is progressive, but you've got to remember that you've got hundreds of recruits that are all different. So it was key that these individuals, although the program was well built and it was progressive, they're running in boots every day and they're carrying these rucksacks, these Bergens, heavy kit. They just didn't have the strength to accommodate in a lot of cases. So therefore, bringing in a sort of more structured strength program prior to this and incorporating more strengthening work was definitely beneficial, because yes, there might have been some that were there already, but it just brings that bottom third that don't have the strength to accommodate the stress up to a base level. So yeah, it was definitely important for injuries.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, so you decided that like the military wasn't for you and that's not where you wanted to kind of spend your career. And you'd always been involved in combat sport. And you said earlier, like, I wanted to open more of a combat type gym. Now, what you own now is not a combat based gym. So where did that shift happen?
So I think what it was I was obsessed. I'm quite an obsessive person, as in like I get into something, I become obsessive about it. So when I Thai boxed 7 days a week. I was shadow boxing in my room. I was hitting the bag outside. So I was obsessed with combat sports. And I did, a lot of competitions. I was never going to be world champion, but I did a lot and I loved it. And then after joining the army, when I went away from competing and boxing, I was exposed to more general forms of training. So up to this point, I was very much conditioning. I was doing a lot of running, lots of circuit training, hadn't been exposed to barbell training as much. And it was when I was living in Germany, actually, that I read Starting Strength by Mark Rippetoe, which was sort of my big introduction into barbell training properly. And I sort of fell in love with the strength side and becoming a bit more of a strength coach. So I started to bias into that. And I still had a primary focus of, because I built up a lot of knowledge about combat sports, I saw that as a bit of a specialty for me as a strength and conditioning coach. However, as time went on, I just realized that my love wasn't for combat sports, it was for the physical training. And I realized one of the key things I say to a lot of my students now and people that ask me about, what I enjoyed most about what I do is its contrast. So I'll do a full day in the gym. The next day I'll be at home writing, looking after the kids. So I like the contrast. So I wouldn't want to be pigeonholed into having a combat gym where I'm working with combat athletes all the time. I don't even want to work with athletes all the time. So I've worked as a head S&C coach at rugby clubs. I've worked with combat athletes. I've worked with ultra athletes. But I also want to work with general clients as well. So I want normal people that aren't doing any sport. They just want to get stronger. They want to get fitter. I don't do transformation stuff, so weight loss stuff, that's not an interest of mine. But if someone wants to get stronger, fitter, faster, learn technique, they're like my perfect client. So I like doing elite athlete stuff. I like doing hobbyist athlete stuff, and I like doing just general training stuff. And that's why, as time went on, although I still have a love for combat sports, and I still, love when I get a fighter come to me and I can work with them, I just prefer doing it all. It's people often sort of say about jack of all trades as being a negative thing, but I think it's a hugely positive thing to have the skill set across the board. And that's what I do. And that's what I love more so than just specializing.
Right.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. a Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
So you didn't, take over a gym. You basically started a gym from scratch. And so starting anything from scratch, there's definitely like a learning curve. There's definitely a lot of obstacles that come into play. And so kind of going back to starting your gym, take me back to like the early moments and, how did you get your first, let's say 5 or 10 clients?
So, yeah, it was the key, as I sort of mentioned, whenever people ask me about this is I was like really optimistic and I was naively optimistic. I call it naive optimism. So I was under the impression when I was in the military, I was like, well, I'm an ex-Army physical training instructor. I'm an S&C coach. I've worked with some cool people. I'm going to leave the military and set up a personal training business. And I had no money, like literally no money, because I spent it all on beer. It was beer tokens for me in the military. And, I spent it on courses. So I had zero savings, literally zero savings. But I thought that when I was going to leave, I was going to come to the town that I'm in, which is Macclesfield. It's near Manchester. And it's a relative. I live in an industrial town. It's actually the official end of the Silk Road. It's a silk town. It's full of old mills and stuff, but it's also got very affluent areas around it. So I was like, I'm going to leave the military, ex-Army physical training instructor, and people are just going to be running to me to train with me, right? So I was naively optimistic, and what happened was my goal was to have I had kit in my van because I ran boot camps in the northeast of England. So I was going to set up a boot camp on a park. That was going to be popular because I was an ex-Army physical training instructor. From there, I was going to start PTing people and eventually get my own studio. That was the plan. First session on the park, no one turned up. And then after so many weeks, I had about 2 people there. There was one woman who was essentially my first client. Then my van's gearbox went, and I couldn't afford to fix it. So I had to sort of take it to a garage, and they gave me like £300 for it, like $400. And at that point, I was like panicking a little bit. And there was a local boxing gym. So one of my best mates growing up, his cousin had a boxing gym. So I said to him, can I store my kit? It was only a few dumbbells and kettlebells and stuff you'd use on a boot camp. I was like, can I store my kit in your boxing gym? And he said, yeah. So I stored it there, and I said to him, look, can I do a bit of PT out of here because I've got nowhere to train people, and I can't get my stuff to the park every week. So he said, yeah. So I sort of started training people there, and it was only 1 or 2 boot camp clients. And the mill owner at the time, well, he still owns the mill. He said to me, oh, we've got a little room there that you can have for 40 quid a week. So I was like, well, I can't afford my own rent, really. I can't really afford to take on this room. He says, well, I'll give you a 3-month rent free period. However, you've got to take all the kit that's in the room. And it took me I filled like 3 skips. He was a bit, he wasn't dodgy. He was just a bit of he just took the mick a little bit. A lovely guy, really. So I took the room, and I said to my first boot camp client, do you want to come and do sessions with me? And then she was like, well, I can't really justify personal training. I pay a £5 for the boot camp. You're going to be charging 20, 30 quid for a personal training session, especially because it was peak time. It was 6:30 in the evening. So I just said, no, it's fine. Like, you pay what you pay now. But if you can get like your sisters to come, because I know she had a few sisters or a couple of friends, you can all pay a £5 each, and it can be like a group PT session. So she was like, fine. So I honoured that. after weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was actually a couple of months, no one had come with her. So she was like, "You can give up my slot," and I was like, "No. Yeah, you're my first ever client after leaving the army. I'm not gonna, let you go, right?" And this is when I started to get busy. Eventually, her sisters came, and what I'd done since leaving the military was I'd got my uniform. So I set up my brand, which was called 5S. So it was strength, speed, stamina, suppleness, skill. Essentially, all the components of fitness combined into 5S. The tagline was bringing strength and conditioning to the masses. And I went to that little room every day. I had like 2 clients a day, and I went there and I spent all day making videos and posting them to Facebook. And I spent all day writing articles on my laptop and just going, "Here's an article by 5S Coach Jay." And that's what I spent all day doing. And then eventually her sisters came and started training. And one of them expressed interest in 5S and what it was. And she said, "Oh, is it a franchise? The way it comes across like quite a big company." And it wasn't. It was just me sort of faking it until I made it, really. And she says, "Well, what's your plan?" And I was like, "Well, I want a big gym. It's going to be a strength and conditioning gym." Explain what that was. So a much more experienced coach delivering training to people. We're going to have 2 types of classes: strength classes, which is barbell training, where we make you stronger, and conditioning classes, which is high intensity training, using rowers, didn't have a row at the time, but using kettlebells, dumbbells, battle ropes, tires, stuff like that. And she was like, "That's cool." Eventually, she offered me investment. So I was offered £50,000 of investment to start a gym. I had to just source a location and get it started. So my first ever client, her sister was my first investor. So she gave me £50,000 to then go and start a gym. And that's where the gym started.
Was that like a debt, or was that like an equity payment where she was like, now going to be 30%, 50% owner in 5S?
So that was actually like they had equity plus it was paying it back though. Mm-hmm. So it was good for me because I would have never got it, but it was also like, good for them. But they actually, the clause was, it sounds like terrible then really. The clause was if I bought it back, they would just give me the shares back, essentially. So they took 25% for £50,000. I had to pay them the £50,000 back. But when I did pay the £50,000 back, which I have, they give me back the shares.
Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially it was like right. So it's essentially like a debt payment, but if you weren't to pay back the debt, then they would have equity in the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
It's just providing some level of security. Yeah.
So, but building a big gym it's not like you build it and they will come type of thing, right? Still at the time, you probably you have just kind of a handful of clients. And so, all of a sudden going to a gym that's going to have all this overhead and utilities and rent and all of that. Like, what was that transition like? Was it like once you built the thing, you were able to now kind of create some momentum, or did you get some more momentum before you got into actual gym ownership?
Yeah, that was the naive optimism again, where I just thought people would come, and I'm definitely the type, take the leap and grow your wings on the way down.
Right.
Fortunately, by the time I'd got the investment, what had happened is I was in this old mill in Macclesfield, so very much an industrial town. However, I definitely think that I was a higher standard of PT, so I had a lot of experience. And my style of PT was very much focused on bringing strength conditions to matter. So my idea was that average is no longer average. The average person now is running tough mudders, they're doing ultra marathons there. Even though they don't necessarily need world-class training, they want their coach to be a world-class coach. So that was the sort of approach I took. And once I got the initial handful of clients, I did actually see that it sort of snowballed. So it was getting the initial few was horrendously hard for me. I think I've had a harder time than a lot of the PTs that now work for me and coaches in my gym, that it took me longer than I thought it would. But once I got the few in, the word of mouth that resulted from that, and obviously the videos that I was putting on Facebook, and back then, Facebook, I was putting posts up, I wasn't boosting them, I had a few hundred followers on Facebook, and the videos were getting a few thousand views. So Facebook pages were a lot kinder to you, I think, back then. But yeah, the word of mouth, it just snowballed. And I actually got to the point where I was doing about a minimum of 40, sometimes 50 hours of personal training a week. So I was actually doing quite well as a personal trainer. I was doing more than would be sustainable long term. You know, I was working till like 11 o'clock at night in that little facility. But so I had a good client base at that point, but it was definitely just the naive optimism. So when I opened the gym, I was like, you know what, it's a small of time. There's a gap in the market. If I do some Facebook ads, if I really push hard at this, they are going to come. I genuinely believe that the membership was just going to go like that because the overheads were really high. I actually had someone offer me investment before the investment that I took, and they were sort of stalling on giving me the money. And I found this facility, and the landlord of the facility turned around and said, I'll give you 3 months rent free, but it starts today. From when I've told you, you get 3 months rent free. And he says, if you don't agree by, you know, whatever time, I'm giving it to someone else, you know. And he was just playing hardball. I turned around to the initial investors and said, look, I want this facility. It's a 9-year lease. I want to sign it. And they said, look, go ahead and sign it, but we haven't given you the money yet. We've not got the go ahead yet. And I actually signed the lease. So I was reckless beyond belief. And they actually started to really finger with the money, and they turned around to me, and not in a terrible way. They were just very cautious. They turned around and said, look, if you've got other investment, then take it. But I actually did. They were sort of giving, you know, they were calling my bluff because I said, look, someone else is interested in investing. Are you guys wanting to invest? They were just calling my bluff and saying, you know, if you want to go with someone else, go with someone else. We withdraw our investment. So I went, brilliant. Because actually I was giving them, they were giving me £40,000 for 30%. So I was better off. So I would have stayed with them through loyalty, but I just jumped to the next investor. So I'd signed the lease with all this high rent and rates and all these bills, and I couldn't afford it at all. And it was just completely naive and just ballsy and maybe a little bit reckless. I couldn't have done it now with my young children and having all the sort of financial overheads. And in all honesty, I had an initial bulk of signups that didn't cover my costs. And it was, you know, incredibly hard for the first few years because I went from earning quite a good wage as a personal trainer to then being down to paying myself £1,200 a month. And I was PTing every hour God sends. I was doing 85 hours a week in the gym. And financially, it's been horrifically hard over the years. I would say that one of my pet hates now is when people say money doesn't matter, money doesn't buy happiness. I understand what they mean by money doesn't buy happiness, but I just think you've never been broke. You don't know how unhappy it can make you when you are literally broke. And I don't mean, you know, I've not got much money by the end of the month. Like literally, like you're just, you know, collecting debt and getting charges on credit cards, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's scary, and this is your business, and it's horrific. It's the hard, you know, my entire life, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to endure was financial stress through business, you know?
I'd recommend this to any coaches or even clinicians out there that are looking to build a business around a product that they already really believe in.
As a brand new user, just being sold on the streamline of being able to put everything in a centralized location. Anyone that is just fumbling with Google Sheets to Facebook messages, group messaging, text messaging.
For anybody that wants to be able to coach their clients, you know, many times you use different tools and resources, and when you're trying to manage that, even on a Google Sheet or on regular technology, you're limited on duplicating the data over and over.
I think if I'm going to, recommend the app for anyone, it's going to be myself. If I want to take my business to the next level, so definitely looking to do that in the near future here. Everybody can really benefit from it. I use it in the rehab sphere, but I also utilize it in the training thing. You can do the same thing with nutrition, right? There's so many uses for it.
For everybody, coaches, clinicians, anyone that kind of works in the industry, chiros, PTs, trainers.
This is one simple solution that we can create to all of our users and all our clients.
So if you want to create a way to systematize your business so you can scale, I have not seen a better product for that.
Especially too, because it's not like you're not putting in the work. You're not just sitting at home watching Netflix every day. Like you're putting in 85 hours, and the return on that just is so small. And so did you always have this belief that if I just keep grinding, if I just keep pushing, at some point I'm going to catch a break and this thing is going to take off?
Yeah, basically. So and that's been the case of every venture I've done, where I just have, the way I see it is I just have absolute over the top confidence in it that I think it's going to get, hit the stars. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't, you're not losing anything. You're going to be worse off being pessimistic, and you're going to be worse off thinking, oh, I'm being too cautious. Don't get me wrong. I think I've been lucky and I've been reckless, and I think you've got to be very careful. It could have gone another way. But what's helped me is always being overly passionate and overly confident in my ideas, because I think fundamentally that's what sells it and what people buy into. If you're passionate, the passionate sort of demonstration of expertise is what I always say to people is the key to coaching. People buy into passion, and it although I would say none of my companies and none of my ventures have been successful as I'd like them to be, it doesn't matter, because they've all been more successful because I believe them to be the next big thing, and whether that is in some ways, delusional in a sense that I'm opting for that delusion, that naive optimism. And I'm taking that approach where this is going to be huge. I'm going to put everything into it and I'm going to just jump. And that's helped me. Because if it doesn't achieve as much, what does it really matter?
Right. So was there a moment when the gym really took off, or did you hire a business coach, or was there anything like transformative that really turned that business around or really gave it some gas? Or was it really just like day in, stack another brick, stack another brick, stack another brick until you finally kind of got to that break even point?
Yeah, in all honesty, it was the latter. So it wasn't like some secret sauce or anything like that. It was just, I knew my model was good, because the way I always perceived how you build a business is if you can franchise that business, which I don't want to franchise it, but if you create a model that someone else would look at and go, I want to buy that model because it's so good, it's formulaic. I think that's one of the secret sauces to a good business. So it's that it's got everything set in place. So I knew the model was good, and I knew people liked me as a coach. I think the key to coaching, aside from being passionate and having a little bit of expertise, is fundamentally being personable and being likable. That's probably about 70% of it. Having the knowledge is almost sort of expected. That's a given. But no, it was just carrying on grinding. And actually what I find is, like people will always say, it's like that, isn't it? That progression where we'd have peaks and troughs. And now we're at a point where we've got a great membership. We've got a couple hundred members, and but it was slow and steady, and it was up and down, but it was believing in what it was, and it took time. And we're in a town where we're at a point now where we've established ourselves so well. We've been open around almost 8 years now. That people know us. We've had that many people come and go that I can just almost sit on 5S now, and it just sells itself. So every week I get people emailing, want to try a free week. So what we do is we have a free week. You come down, try a free week. We don't have a contract, but you pay 50 quid a month. You get everything included. There's no packages, nothing like that. It's just straight to the point, and you get everything. And we have the gym's open all day, and there's 5 or 6 classes a day, and that's what we do. And it's got to the point where it's a good, profitable gym with a good membership base. I know everyone by their first and last name. It's one of the friendliest gyms you could ever imagine. And to me, it's a lifestyle business now. It's not a cash cow. It's my hub. So I'm happy I've got myself down. My goal as a business was not actually financially based in the gym. I wanted it to make money and profit. But once I got to a certain point in that business that I thought I was getting towards the threshold of what the gym can do, I was like, well, what I need to do is reduce my hours. So I was doing 80 plus hours a week in the gym. I've got it down to 60 because I'm an author, I'm a writer, and I run an academy and stuff like that. I was like, I need to get my hours in the gym down to 40 hours a week. So that's a normal working week. And then I can spend 20, 30, 40, 50 more doing the other stuff, which sounds like, I'm working really hard, but it's the stuff I enjoy. It's sitting in my office here, writing and stuff like that. So that was my main goal. And that's where I've got to now. So I do 40 hours a week in the gym. I'm fully booked with clients in the hours between the classes. It makes me a reasonable amount of money. The gym will never make me a six-figure earner within itself, ever. With the size of facility I've got, I'm not really that fussed at that point about getting a bigger facility, because I've got almost a Goldilocks zone where it's got an awesome atmosphere, and it's got an awesome membership base.
So your model is group classes. Is that kind of the model? You have the strength classes, and then you have more of the conditioning or high intensity classes.
Yeah. So the model is that it's an open gym, so you can come and train at any time. We've got a whole big rig where we've got a dozen racks where people can train doing the strength training, and then we've got a big grass area where we've got sleds, ski ergs, rower, bike ergs, stuff like that. And the model is you can train anytime, but also there's conditioning classes which you don't have to book into. You rock up. That's high intensity circuits run by the coaches. They change every time. And then the strength training is actually, we have a big strength board. You come in and it's not like, right, everyone, you're doing squat. It's like, right, what are you working today? They follow in the program, or they follow an adaptive program. So the coach will say, what are you on? They'll say, right, I want to do lower body today. They put them through a lower body session. Depending on how experienced they are, they get less or more coaching. If it's a new guy coming in, they'll take him through what you do in the initial sessions. So it's as close as you'll get to like personal training, but on a class-based setting. And that's the way 5S runs its classes. And it's turned into a really effective model where people do a mix of conditioning and strength. And we also do a lot of fitness racing, like the High Rock Star, My Fitness Race, which is Deadly Dozen. And that's got quite big in the gym.
So do you just have a coach then that is like kind of floating on the floor, because you don't necessarily know when someone's going to come in because they don't have an appointment? So are they just kind of like there from 6 a.m. until noon, and if someone comes in, they start working with them? Or what's the model around that?
No, so the coaches are in all day, and myself. But if someone comes in outside of class time, then they have to know what they're doing. They can ask a coach, like, what's this or what's that? That's fine, but that coach might be PTing one of their clients. So if you're coming in on your own, you know what you're doing. If you come in during the class, a strength class, there's a coach on that strength class. If you've got a question for them, they'll take you through it. And if you're on a conditioning class, that is instructor led, where they're going to say, right, this is a circuit, this is what you're doing, music's up, and they're shouting at you.
Got it. So you have the actual true strength classes, true conditioning classes, where it's 6 a.m. show up and we're going through it with the coach. But they can also then come in, if that doesn't work for them, they could come in during their lunch hour or whatever, get their workout in, and then there's personal training as well that the coaches do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have 5 classes a day. So it's like 6:30 a.m., 9:30, 12:15, 5:30, and 6:30. Any hours in between that, the coaches are just personal training. So when I'm in on a Monday, I do all the classes and I do about 7 hours of PT. So it's a full day of coaching. It's a long day, but I actually prefer to do, I'm in the gym Monday, Tuesday I'm at home, Wednesday I'm in the gym, Thursday I'm at home, Friday I'm in the gym, Saturday daytime I'm in the gym, Sunday I'm at home. And that's the way I like it. I like the contrast.
So you're still working 40 hours in the gym right now?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then you also have, how old are your kids?
I've got an 8-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Okay. So they're very busy. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I understand what life is like outside of work. And so so if you're spending 40 hours in the gym, right, and then you have these other ventures that you're doing as well, like how do you kind of fit it all in? I don't want to say balance, because I don't really believe in this idea of balance, but how do you make it all work from a week to week basis?
So I'm in the gym all day, Monday, Wednesday, throughout the daytime on a Friday, have the evening off Friday, till 2:00 on a Saturday, have Sunday off. So Tuesday, Thursday, I'm with the kids all day. Sunday, I'm with the kids all day and the wife. My wife works part-time. I basically do all my writing, all my academy stuff, everything else in the evening. So the kids go up generally at like 7, 8 o'clock. And my wife, we spend a lot of time together. We get on, really, really well, have, date nights through the weekend. But she tends to like to chill upstairs with the kids. She watches her YouTube. On the TV, she watches like videos of people cleaning the houses and organizing the shelves and stuff. I read books on fantasy like Tolkien and stuff, so I can't knock it. Everyone's into what they're into. So yeah, from about 9 o'clock every evening, I just spend 3 hours just writing. And it's not, I always make it clear that that's not because I'm a hard worker. It's because I'm very fortunate that I enjoy writing and I enjoy planning. I enjoy creating content. So when it comes to, I'll often stick a podcast on or whatever it is. This is my office. I've made my office sort of, it's very personal space to me, full of the stuff that I enjoy. It's a little bit nerdy, but it's packed with everything that I love. I drink my coffee and I write. And every evening, even when I get in from the gym, I just work on my other company. And that's probably, I would say, in excess of 3 to 4 hours an evening, every evening. And obviously when the kids are sort of doing stuff, sometimes I might get a couple of hours on the laptop. Sometimes in the gym when I've got cancellations, I can get extra stuff done on writing and planning and creating content.
And so when you say the other company, is that the kind of courses, mentorship?
Yeah, so what I've got is that I've published currently so far just over 20 books. So I sell them on Amazon and I sell them through my academy as PDFs. That's one area. And then I've got strength and conditioning course, which is we qualify personal trainers and strength and conditioning coaches in the UK, but that's an internationally approved qualification. So we also have students abroad. And it also has online courses and ebooks that we sell through the academy. So I create content for that. And I also run the personal training courses. So luckily we can sort of do a lot of the face-to-face tuition while the gym's open. We do it during the classes. They help teach. They come under my wing, and then they go through all my online content, various books, and also the governing bodies content that creates a lot of the sort of standard-based material that they need to do. So yeah, that's the main second company. And then the third aspect is I'd say the next aspect is my mentorship and consultation work that I do with various sports teams and athletes, which is generally online. And then the fourth aspect of it is the fitness race, which I'm developing currently, that we're set to do 22nd of June next year. I'm writing a book on fitness racing because I believe it's going to be the next biggest sport. I think CrossFit's huge, but I see it as specialist fitness racing, just like OCR. But what I deem as conventional fitness racing is like the high rocks, where there's no technical barrier to entry. It's just purely fitness, rowing, running, kettlebell deadlift, wall ball, stuff like that. It's not Olympic weightlifting, gymnastics and stuff like that. So that's the fourth area that I'm really throwing myself into. We've already sort of broken even on ticket sales, and we're 9 months off the competition, as in the race day. So that's actually my main focus now. But concurrently, I'm always creating content for SCC, because SCC being strengthconditioningcourse.com, because I actually sort of not struck gold, but I struck gold in terms of engagement on Instagram, because I was always like, what content should I create for strength and conditioning course, right, on the Instagram? I was like, should I do video content? And I was like, well, production value wise, I'm not going to produce stuff that's better than the best guys on Instagram. I don't think the video content is in any way unique. I don't think pictures of me are going to sell that well, really. I'm no Brad Pitt. So I was like, well, what do I enjoy doing? And what am I good at? And I'm good at sort of writing sort of short. I say good, I'm not a brilliant writer, but I enjoy it. I'm good at writing, making things simple. So what I did was I started creating PDFs. So I took the books that I'd written and I created PDFs on PowerPoint. All I did was come up with stuff like, squat variations. And I'd be like, back squat, front squat, Anderson squat, Zercher squat, where I'd be like deadlift variations, hex bar, conventional, sumo, deficit, rack pull, RDL, all these different things. And I'll just explain them. And you know what? These didn't even look that good on Instagram, because the writing's often a page full of writing. So what I'd do is I'd save these PowerPoints as PDFs, and then I'd open them on my phone and I'd screenshot it. So I'd screenshot 2 slides of these little ebooks, right? And the first one I did was actually a 12-week program. And I thought, right, what I'll do is I'll save it as a PDF. I'll copy the Dropbox link. I'll post it on Instagram. And we'd had gained about, 3,000 or 4,000 followers at this point because we'd done a lot of Facebook ads and Instagram ads to try and sell my courses. So we'd developed a little bit of a following. But I created this 12-week program, and I thought, right, what I'll do is put follow and comment below for a free copy of this program. And anyone that comments, I'll just message them with the Dropbox link, and they can click on the link and download it. So I thought I was going to get knowing Instagram, I thought I was going to get 2 or 3 people comment, and I got 400 people comment. Loads of people just went, oh, yes, me. So I was like, all right, that's a one-off. So I wrote another 12-week program, posted it, same again. And I was like, all right, well, I'll do educational ones on how to squat. I'll do ones on anatomy. So I did one on anatomy, and that ended up getting 150,000 likes. And we went from 4,000 followers to over 100,000 in a 6-month period, because I was just creating written content that any expert would look at and say, that's not ideal for social media because you can't really see it perfectly. It's not in your face enough. It's not like an infographic. But I think it works because it was in the middle. So what I do is I often say my biggest strength is that I'm not an academic. So because it wasn't really high level academic science coming from a PhD level of view, and it wasn't just general fitness stuff where people are talking about just knee valgus or how deep should you squat or very generic stuff. It was in the middle where it was looking at the complexity, but it was dumbed down. It was at a level that was consumable, without it just being a short, it was worthwhile downloading and having a good read through, but it wasn't a textbook.
Right.
And that's something that I'm constantly working on all the time now. Yeah.
So who were you attracting? Were you attracting more of the consumer fitness market, or were you attracting other personal trainers, other coaches that wanted to learn a little bit more?
So I think we established as a customer avatar was other fitness professionals and then high level enthusiasts, we call them. So that's people that are really into, so people that would do a personal training course just out of interest. So people that are really into the gym. So that it's not novices, it's that middle tier. It's good fitness professionals and high level enthusiasts. So people that are really into gym training. The other category that it attracted, which was quite surprising, which is a big compliment sort of to my writing, was a lot of professors, a lot of doctors. When I did the anatomy stuff, there was pros and cons to the anatomy stuff, because the anatomy stuff did really, really well because I was basically breaking down anatomy. I published 2 short books on anatomy and physiology, and it was all geared around what fitness professionals need to know. And that did really well in Pakistan and India and places like that. They just absolutely consumed it. And that was a big part of why we gained so much following. However, these people weren't necessarily as interested in the S&C stuff. The anatomy was great for them because it was very much simplified and it covered a broad range of topics. And I basically took the anatomy beyond what a fitness instructor needed. And a lot of the medical community liked that, especially in India and places like that. They were just like, this is really good free content. But then they weren't converting well to the S&C stuff. So I gained a huge following of people that weren't necessarily very qualified for what my company really is.
And you obviously saw impact in selling courses and doing that kind of stuff based upon this reach that you now had?
Yeah, well, the whole idea of the sort of the post that I was doing was to sell the courses. So I wanted to provide I just thought I could do courses better, and I liked writing books, and I thought, half of these books can be video courses, and that's the way that you capture people's emails. I mean, at the end of the day, if you sell a book, you want some way of capturing their emails so you can sell the next book to. If you put I created a free muscle manual to put it out on Facebook, and the whole idea was to capture emails to then try and sell them a muscle course, So yeah, it was all about sort of developing an audience to sell the courses. And that was it. Yeah.
And that strategy, do you feel like, would you go back and do that same strategy, or what would you change about it, if anything?
No, I would have kept the strategy the same. I think I was too focused on engagement and not enough on conversion. So it's
Okay.
like not necessarily an ego trip, but it's nice to see thousands of people commenting and liking, and it's nice to see your followers going up by loads every day. So I was promoting the posts, so I started to boost the post, advertise posts that were doing specifically very well. But I was concentrating on which posts were getting the most engagement. And because that obviously felt good to me, it was like an ego boost. I'm getting hundreds of thousands of likes on this post and thousands of followers a day. But I wasn't getting people that were interested in buying. And I always say to people now, it's all well and good, 10,000 people liking my post and telling me that it's an awesome post. But if then they're not willing to spend $10, buying the upsell course, then they mustn't like it that much. They don't really care that much. They're not that bought in. And actually, since I've stopped sort of promoting hard into anatomy, I've actually seen even though my following is still raising with qualified audience, I've actually seen a huge drop off of them people that are interested in the anatomy stuff. But now I'm sort of pushing back hard into the S&C type of stuff. They're just unfollowing. They weren't committed to myself or my brand. They just like the free content. So definitely that would be my advice to anyone is, number one, it's about conversion, not necessarily about engagement. And it can be very easy to get a bit sucked up with the engagement, which is what I did, and spend time and money trying to push that.
Right. And so what would you have done different from a conversion standpoint? Would it be looking at the posts that converted better and really trying to push and boost those posts? Or was there anything on the back end as far as like the mechanisms of the conversion? Was it like the follow-up email or how the upsell worked or things like that?
Yeah. So I would first and foremost, like on a broad level, would look at, when I do a post, I would make sure I would build that customer journey. So you've got at the top of the funnel, I've created this post. This is the lead magnet. This is what's bringing the lead into the funnel. And then the way I would work it is we automated that they then get sent the link. And also we'll send them a link to join the academy to get more free content. Would essentially upsell them to something that relates to that ebook. So if I've created an ebook on anatomy, the upsell would be a short anatomy course. And that would be the metric that would be most important to me, like how many people are actually clicking on that link, not how many people are liking the post, how many people are commenting on the post, how many people are clicking on that link and how many people are buying that course. And sometimes I was creating content that wasn't getting as much engagement, but I was getting much higher sales. And I was concentrating on the ones that were getting the higher engagement a lot of the time because it was driving me Instagram following. It felt good seeing the Instagram following engage. But yeah, my advice for people would be is set up that customer journey and optimize it. So have that, you've got your email service provider, make sure that you're trying to capture their email. So you've got your academy, you've got the lead magnet. What we do is have a tripwire, and that's always quite a cheap course because once we've got people into the funnel, we're not going to go straight to selling them like a £500 course. You need to sort of qualify them. You need to get them used to spending. And what I try to do with the lead magnet is actually go above and beyond. So the lead magnet's really good. So they go, right, the next product's really good. The next product's really good. And they're like, wow. So if I've spent $10 and it's this good, how good is the $100 product going to be? And that was the mentality I took. And I think I should spend more time optimizing that. I'm sort of thinking about what lead magnet, what ebook can I create that's really going to sell the strength course, rather than just what can I get that's going to maximize engagement.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, if you look at kind of how you spend your time now, where you have the gym, which is obviously a large part of your week, is working in there, which, I mean, that's almost like the foundation that feeds all of these other things, right? Like if it isn't for the gym, you don't have the courses, you don't have the mentorship, you don't have all these other pieces. So that's kind of the foundation. So if you had to break your day down, or let's call it your week down in percentages, what percentage you spend in the gym versus on the mentorship versus kind of optimizing digital content creation versus the race stuff?
So I would say if I do, on average, I would say I put in towards, I would say sometimes it falls into like an 80 hours of doing 80 to 100 hours of doing the work. So the sort of 40 hours in the gym is at least sort of 50% of it. And then from there, I would say the biggest part is my writing on top of that. So another sort of 30% would be writing. And that's obviously relevant to the race right now because the book that I'm writing now is a training manual and rule book for the race. So the race would be the other biggest part. Everything outside of the gym right now is the race because I'm writing for the race. And then the other 10% would be the sort of creating content and working on the academy stuff. Unfortunately, I've got a lot more sort of stuff I need to produce for the academy, and that's on hold because of the race. And also the beauty of the academy content that I create is I've created over 200 to 300 ebooks so far, because I've been doing it quite a few years now. So I can recycle a lot of that content. So I have a Word document of just which post I can do. And as I create new content, as I'm writing this book, I might write a chapter on maximum aerobic speed or lactate threshold heart rate. I'm like, right, this is a post. So I copy and paste that into a slide, add a few photos, there's a new post. So every week there's new posts getting sort of created, but I'm also just funneling through the old posts. So if I were to start that list now, I could make a post every day for 365 days and not repeat myself. That was always my goal. So I have all this stock content that I could post every day, 365 days. I've not recycled it. People will not see it. And by the time that 365 days are up, you've got that many new followers and that many people have forgot about that stuff or they need refreshing on that stuff, but it's fine. So I do recycle my content, and actually I only post 3 times a week on Instagram through SCC. I post on my gym page whenever someone does something cool, like a fitness race or a run. I don't post instructional videos. And the Deadly Dozen, I try to post 2 to 3 times a week. And I know you should probably post more, but it's what's realistic, because I definitely, when my following was getting really big on Instagram for me, I was posting every day and I got too consumed with Instagram. Instagram became like, that was everything, following on Instagram, and it was unhealthy and it was a little bit sad. And I was like, no, like Instagram's one part of the business that's effective. So if I don't feel like posting, I don't post, and I really don't care. You know, if I lost 200 followers tomorrow, like I actually found that one of the key things for me that helped me was when I actually lost a load of followers after I stopped promoting the anatomy stuff, which at first was a real stake through the heart, because I was like, you know, I've tried so hard to develop this following, and then I lost quite a lot quite fast because I'd stopped sort of pushing anatomy. And that almost, maybe it was resentment where I just sort of lost a bit of love for it, but it was a good thing, whereas now I don't really care. Now I want to create good content for people that follow me, but I don't care if people unfollow me, and I don't care if I don't post every day, as long as I'm providing value on Instagram.
Right. Yeah, I think that's awesome. So, like you weren't busy enough, you wanted to do a race. So I mean, races, obstacle course races, that kind of stuff. I mean, they're big now all over the world with our Tough Mudders and Spartan races and that kind of stuff. And so were you like, okay, I like that stuff, but I think there's a piece in the market that's missing, and so I'm going to go create this thing? Or how did you come about the concept for your kind of Deadly Dozen?
I think that there is a massive piece in the market, but I think it's already had people fill it, you know, primarily High Rocks. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. But so High Rocks they're like the biggest fitness race in the world now. If they release an event tomorrow and it's 5,000 participants, it sells out in a few weeks. They've got events all over the world. And it's like 1K run, 1K ski, so you do 8 times 1K runs, and then the stations in between are 1K ski, sled push, sled pull, burpee broad jumps, row, farmers carry lunges and wall balls, right? So it's a really hard race, takes people over an hour. And basically what brought me towards this was I was obviously very fit in the military. I've always been a cross-country runner. I was a Thai boxer and boxer. Genetically, I'm naturally quite fit. I'm not world class, but I've got a high baseline of fitness. And I've always loved hard physical training. You know, when people say, "Oh, you're motivated because you train," I enjoy training hard. I like the feeling of training hard. You know, and feeling like you're absolutely gonna die. I like that feeling. But actually, what happened to me is when I joined the military, and your job was always marching and running, and I was always a skinny Thai boxer. I think I developed a little bit of bigorexia where I wanted to be big. You know, if I'm going to be a strength coach, I needed to be bigger. And especially when I got posted to train the recruits, there was definitely a little bit of a culture of you've come from battalion where you're all sort of a little bit skinnier as PTIs because you're always running and marching. Here, although you're doing a lot of marching and running, you're not going on exercise and having to eat rations. You can be in the gym every day. You can eat 6 meals a day. And my mentality was very much like lean into powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting, especially powerlifting, bodybuilding, get big. I've not really got very good genetics for getting big. You know, I was always really skinny. I'm over 6 foot, but I'm slim. But all the emphasis went on to getting big. And I became obsessed with like getting stronger and lifting heavier and powerlifting. And that carried across when I left the army. I wasn't doing as much as my own metabolic conditioning, like fitness work. I was very much biased towards strength. And then COVID hit. And I was a binge drinker in the military, you know, loved the party. However, I'd never really drank through the week, you know, as an adult. And COVID was the first time that I started to sort of drink during the week. And it wasn't a problem. It was just, you know, have a few IPAs, have a few beers in the evening because there wasn't really much to separate your day. And I went from, you know, I went up to about 18 stone. So I was like 110 kilos, you know, I was, you know, well over like 240 pounds or something like that, whatever it is.
Right.
And it got to the point where I actually, you know, I was quite strong, but the first time in my life I felt unhealthy. I was like, you know what, I'm getting out of breath, like just carrying these dumbbells. And I developed a little bit of a gut. And looking back at my strength training course now, like there's an element where I'm a little bit far. I could pull off as a strength coach. I was like, you know what, I was feeling unfit. And I measured my blood pressure and it was a bit high. And I was like, shit, like high blood pressure, especially for men, it's like a massive indicator of like, you know, stroke, heart attack, early death. I've got young kids. And like, I was just like, this is really, really shit. And then it was at that time that one of my members turned around and said, do you want to do the high rocks with me? Do you want to do the fitness races of doubles? And I was like, oh man, I can't be arsed, because when you don't train hard, it makes you lazy. And I was like, oh no.
Right.
And then I started training for it, and it was like something clicked, because it was also at this time that I was strength training still and training, but then I was getting on my laptop, answering emails, editing a bit of a book. I had no buzz for the training. And once I started doing the fitness race training, like, you know, so running 500 meters, then getting on the rower, running 500 meters, doing like 50 kettlebell deadlifts, running 500 meters, I got a massive buzz out of it. I lost like over 50 pounds of weight. Obviously, that's because I addressed my diet a little bit as well, stopped drinking, teetotal now. And I've never, even though I'm like 10, 15 years older, and I'm still 15, 20 kilos heavier than I was when I was a PTI in the military as a young PTI, I can honestly say I've never felt fitter and healthier, and I'm injury free. And I absolutely loved that style of training. And it wasn't CrossFit. Even though I'm a weightlifting coach, I don't really like doing like the gymnastics and the heavy barbell work in conditioning. So I was looking at high rocks and I was like, that's brilliant. I mean, it had 90,000 competitors last year, you know, and they charge about 100 quid a head. You know, they're making tens of millions of pounds. They're already huge. They're going to be 10 times bigger. No doubt. But I was like, this is going to be huge, because I think OCR, like Tough Mudders and stuff, they're always going to be big, but I think they have seen their peak. You know, it was that new thing where everyone's going to go do a mud run and stuff like that. Now, when people get to adults, they often play a lot of sport in school and then they stop playing as adults, right? You might get a few guys play 5-a-side football and stuff like that, right? But what is growing is gym participation. And what every gym member wants really is a goal. And normally that's like a Tough Mudder or it's a run. Now, I think what was missing was fitness racing. but not with a technical barrier to entry. So CrossFit filled a gap, but it was a very niche gap. And that niche gap was a huge amount of people, but it was still niche. It was Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics, handstand walking, ring dips, muscle ups. What I think is the key, which is going to be, in my opinion, the fastest growing sport in the world, is fitness racing, which is there's no technical barrier to entry. It fundamentally comes down to how fit and fast you are. And there's that strength element, but it's not circa max strength. So in my race, you do 12 times 400 meters, right? So you do a 400 meter loop on a track, and then you do an exercise station. The exercise station is kettlebell farmer's carry, kettlebell deadlift, dumbbell lunge, dumbbell snatch, burpee broad jump, kettlebell goblet squat, dumbbell plate front carry, dumbbell push press, bear crawl, plate clean and press, plate overhead carry, and dumbbell devil press. And for example, the kettlebell farmer's carry for men is 24 kilos. For women, it's 16 kilos in each hand. The kettlebell deadlift for men is 32 kilos. For women, it's 24 kilos. But they're doing this for 60 reps. So they're running. I've got actually a printout. Here's one I printed earlier. So you're on an athletics track. So they're going to have timing. So you do a 400 meter loop of the track. You're at the first labour, we call them. Farmer's carry, 30 meter length. You then do another 400.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
All right, so walk me through the map of your race again. We were just kind of showing us before we had some technical difficulties, but pull that map up here once and let's take a look at it.
So I've got this printout of the track. So basically, the way it works is you've got a 400 meter track, which is a key selling point of the race, is that I think athletics tracks are underutilized. They're quite cheap to rent, and you find them in most cities across the world. So what we do is you run a 400 meter loop of the track. From there, you cross this timing mat here. So you get a time for every 400 meter loop that you do, and you get a time every time you cross back over for each exercise station. So 400 meter loop, first station, farmer's carry. And the stations actually go sort of movement, so going up and down the 30 meter lane to on the spot, movement on the spot. So it's farmer's carry to kettlebell deadlift to dumbbell walking lunge to dumbbell snatch. So you run a 400 meter loop, first station, 400 meter loop, second station, 400 meter loop, third station, till you get to the end, which is devil press, which is obviously a horrendous exercise. Finish here. So that's the fitness race, and that was inspired by one of the best ways to develop your 5K time, which is a horrific run to do, is 12 times 400. Yep. The hardest distance on a track are like your 400 and your 800 because they're not short enough to be a sprint, but they're not long enough to pace yourself.
Right.
So the idea was 400's like balls to the wall. And then the exercise stations develop the fundamental movements, hinge, squat, lunge, push, pull, carry. It only uses kettlebells, dumbbells, and weight plates and body weight, obviously. So the equipment's accessible. The idea was it wasn't just a training race, a fitness race. It's a training methodology. So you can train for this race in any gym in the world, in a garage gym at home. You could train for this race with just a pair of kettlebells because you could do the front carry, the overhead carry with a kettlebell. You can do the snatch with a kettlebell. So as long as you have, say, basic weights, you can train for this race. So in my opinion, it's one of the hardest fitness races in the world. Well, it is. A lot of people can say that because it fundamentally comes down to how hard you work. But it's going to be a really intense race with 400 meters because it's a horrific distance. It's a high rep range. And also, I believe it's the most accessible training methodology in the world. And it's a complete training methodology. If you did nothing but deadly dozen training, which is what the manual's all about, you'd be fit, you'd be fast, you'd be strong, you'd be working upper body movements, you'd be working lower body movements, you'd be developing your trunk muscles, and you'd be crazy fit.
So I mean, my guess is you've done it, right? Like, because you have to do it in order to see the flow of things. And so how long did it take you to complete it?
So it takes me about 48 minutes to complete it. So I'm sort of sub 50. And to put that in reference for people that have done high rocks, I've not actually done a high rocks yet. I've booked in Manchester, but I've done simulations of the high rocks, all the correct weights, some of the weights actually heavier to make up for things. And I do my high rocks. I've done a high rocks sub an hour. So I can run the high rocks in around an hour. So that, for anyone that's done that race, has reference. I've had dozens of people do this race, and I've done it dozens of times. And the people that have done a lot of fitness races say the Deadly Dozen is another level of beast because of the shorter runs and the high reps. One of the guys that has done high rocks, done a few other fitness races, he struggled to complete it and said, that's how. And you can complete it as a pair, you can complete it as a relay as well.
Right. I mean, you're just going to have so much lactic buildup that it's really going to be a management of that substrate, because with 400-meter runs, like they're like your legs are dead after one or two, and then having to go do fitness stuff afterwards. Oh, this is awesome. That's super cool. So, I mean, is the goal to really kind of do this? So your inaugural one is coming up in the spring. Is that right?
In the summer over here. So June.
Okay, cool. And then is the goal to do that, like start spreading the good word all over kind of the UK?
Yeah. So basically, obviously I've got some bigger costs, like the timing is actually the biggest cost. To have the timing guys come in, because I want to make sure that the race is done really well, that you have all your metrics. But I'm already in profit like a week after I open the sign up form, and that's not even having that many sign-ups. It doesn't cost that much to run the race.
Right.
The admin is really easy because you can fit all the equipment in one small van. There's tracks all over the country. So really what I have to do, although I am thinking huge,
right,
stripping it down to a more realistic level, I've got to do this event in the summer, and I've got to make it profitable, which is good for a first event, which I will make it profitable. It already is. So I need a good amount of people sign up for the race. I then need to replicate it in a different location that's outside of my bubble. So outside of Macclesfield, where I own a gym and I'm known in the town. From there, I honestly believe that alongside the book, because I've already got a few gyms in the UK that are doing Deadly Dozen training, they're Deadly Dozen affiliates.
Right.
And I've got, obviously the following, it's grown online. The idea then is obviously I can go and set up events in different locations, but eventually I can license it out.
Right.
So if I can ensure that we get, so within a 5-hour day, for example, you can get 300 or 400 competitors through comfortably. Now, if I can get the logistics of the event just right, so we've got, for example, the medal that we've got is quite different. It's what's called a Maury medal. That's a logo, but it's Deadly Dozen. It's a skull bell logo. So it's a solid steel pendant that is what you get for completing the race. So if I can establish it, like I said earlier about my gym business, if you can see it as a franchise, like, is this, so the race doesn't change ever.
Right.
So you go and do a 5K, you go do a 10K, you do a triathlon, it doesn't change. This is the sport. The sport is Deadly Dozen. 12 times 400, 12 exercise stations. So my aim eventually, the long-term age, would be to license Deadly Dozen out.
Yep.
So you could run an event at your local track. I take a percentage of that. I help you facilitate it. I do all the sign-ups. We show you exactly how to run the race. Obviously, you take the rest of the profit. Now, if I can ensure people that are going to get 200-300 sign-ups to an event, people are paying anywhere from $50 to $60 to do the event, then it's quite a profitable venture. And I do think with it being not only one of the most accessible fitness races to set up, tracks aren't expensive to hire.
Right.
You also have indoor tracks as well. I think it has legs.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So, the other thing I'm curious about is, do you run like heats? Do you have like 5 people go? Because obviously you don't have unlimited equipment because you're using things like kettlebells and dumbbells, but do you just run it in like 10-minute heats? Every 10 minutes, you're kind of starting the next group?
Yeah, so it's 12-minute heats. So basically what happens is you have the solos first. So they're the guys running as individuals. So with 4-man waves, you're doing 20 an hour, right? So you do like 3 to 4 hours, maybe 3 hours of that. And that's like your, 60 people. But then you're going into pairs, which is really popular. Straight away, because the way the pairs work is they run together, they do the exercise stations together, they split it, but it's the same equipment. So straight away, you double that to 40 people an hour. Then you go on to relay, which is 4-man teams, man being man or woman. And straight away, you've gone to 80 people an hour. So what they're doing is they do a run and a station, the next person goes, till they've completed the 12. So they end up doing 3 each. So that's the easiest one of the lot. That's like more of a team building event.
Right.
So over the course of a 5-6 hour day, you are seeing hundreds of competitors. You're charging $50 to $60. If you can get, 300 competitors, then, you're in the good figures. And it's something that can be run regularly. The initial outlay is relatively small because with 4-man waves, you're only needing, it's less than 1,000 kilos of equipment. So you're only needing a few weight plates, you're only needing a few dumbbells, and you're only needing a few kettlebells. The track is already laid out. In terms of management, you've already got the track laid out. You've got the center of the track. So you have some line marker spray. Obviously, we're going to be buying lots of banners and flags and stuff like that. And that's where there's a bit more of an initial outlay. But in terms of medals, I can actually monetize that by selling them to the different events for a little bit of a profit as well. And obviously with the training manual and the education that I've got, my aim is to have affiliate gyms and affiliate coaches that pay £12 a month. It's all fixing into that Deadly Dozen brand.
Right.
And they get education, they get the rights to run events, stuff like that. They get race discount for their members.
No, it's very similar to like how Spartan's model is kind of like that right now, at least in the United States. And probably one of the benefits too is as a facility, you probably have all the equipment you need already in your facility. And so it's just a matter of throw it on the truck and take it to the track, and another way to almost monetize your facility a little bit as well.
Yeah, and it builds your exposure in the area. And actually what a lot of people can do is they can raise the funds to run this race by getting just sponsorship from local companies. So if you have a gym, so my gym has all the equipment to run that event for 300 people.
Right.
Now, if I wanted to, I can get enough sponsorship to essentially cover costs because it's a local event. It's good for the community. It raises your gym's awareness in that town. So if you've got like my town's not that big, it's got an athletics track. So if you can get running on an athletics track, it builds funding for the track, which is a good thing.
Right.
And also it builds your exposure within the town. As well as that, it gives the members something. So the buy-in that I've got, my membership has increased since we've been doing the fitness racing massively. And we actually started a WhatsApp group that was specifically for fitness racing. We got dozens of people into that group straight away. So straight away, they're far more dedicated to the gym. So that they're within that community, within the gym. So you're going to see far less drop off. And now I've got a gym of people that are, half of them are training for the Deadly Dozen fitness race. I've even got people that are saying that they're going to get a tattoo of the school bell. So people, it's crazy the amount of buy-in that I've got from my members. So if my members have got that buy-in, I definitely think that can be replicated. So we'll see.
Oh, that's awesome.
The Super Coach Summit by Coach Catalyst is. The Super Coach Summit by Coach Catalyst is.
The Super Coach Summit by Coach Catalyst is.
The Super Coach Summit by Coach Catalyst is room for opportunity.
It's badass.
It's fucking awesome.
Over-delivered. They talked about it, and they definitely did it. It is amazing. It's just been invigorating.
Is exemplary. It's phenomenal and just a great time with great people. And you feel like in Ohana, you feel like a family.
It's unreal.
It's awesome. What will help separate the 1% from the 99%.
Is a really well thought out event, well conceived, well planned, and well executed.
It's such an amazing event to be at in order to grow your business and network with other professionals.
It is top tier. It's one of the best I've been to in the business. It's been unbelievable, and I'm just excited to finish out the day here and keep making connections.
It's an event that you will be very happy that you have attended because next year is going to be even better than this one.
Is freaking badass. If you're not here, you're missing out. See you next year.
This is a super cool concept, and I'm excited to see it evolve. And I think you're onto something. I think it's awesome. So, Cool, man. Well, let's kind of start to wrap things up here. And I got some rapid fire questions just for the end. Some super simple questions. So the first one, I know you're in the UK, so this one, it's not quite as relevant to you guys, but I'm still going to ask it. But burrito, taco, or quesadilla?
I would say burrito.
All right. Do you guys have many burritos in the UK? I know it's not like Mexican food isn't like a big thing.
You do, and unfortunately, Mexican food's not, because when I lived in Germany, I had some Mexican restaurants and they were really good, and they do have some here. But yeah, like we have you get like these tortilla kits in the supermarkets, and they literally just charge you more to buy the wraps,
right.
And then you have to get all the ingredients yourself.
Okay.
And but yeah, there's definitely not a strong culture of like burritos and tacos. Like we eat it, but there's not a strong culture of it.
Right. All right. If you could live in any cartoon world for a week, what cartoon world do you live in?
Oh, cartoon world. Oh, wow. And am I going to be a specific cartoon or?
Well, I mean, you can be, or you can just kind of live in the world. You know, if you've got your kids are a little bit older now, but like Bluey, or go back in the day.
Bluey. Yeah, Bluey's what they watch a lot of. Yeah, it's pretty epic. I don't know. I would probably say something cooler than that. Like it'd be like you've got like I'd probably say, maybe this is a bit of a naff one, but like as a cartoon, I'd be in like one with superheroes, where it's real. Right. So it'd be like Superman. If I was Superman, that's the cartoon I'd be in, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's more of a real world. I'd probably rather be in something that's got magic in it. I don't know. It's a difficult one, yeah.
All right, I like it.
Something that's got magic in it.
All right, last question. If you could have dinner with any person on the planet, past or present, who would you want to sit down and break bread with?
I would be probably quite business driven here, so think about what I can get out of this meeting. So I'd probably try and look for someone that's got a lot of influence and is likely to invest in Deadly Dozen. So I'd probably get like someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like such a huge, massive figure. I reckon I could convince Arnold to invest in Deadly Dozen.
I like it.
For an hour.
I love it.
So that's what I'd do.
I love it. Sticking to the guns. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, man, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you hanging out with me for over an hour and really sharing kind of your journey through this industry and where you're going next. I'm super excited to watch you continue rise.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed chatting, and hopefully we'll catch up in the future sometime.
Sounds good. If people want to find out a little bit more about you and where you live on the internet, what are some of the good places?
The best bet is to just search Coach Jason Curtis. If you go on Instagram, it's strength and conditioning course, but if you search Coach Jason Curtis, it'll come up. And, my personal website is jasoncurtis.org. But I'm sure if you search on Amazon or Google Coach Jason Curtis, you'll find my relevant sites, especially on Instagram. And if you comment on any of my posts on Instagram, you get sent the ebook. So there's thousands and thousands of pages of free content. So if you're in the fitness industry or interested in it, you'll probably find something of use there.
Grab yourself the ebook and then do the upsell. I guarantee it's going to be worth it.
I appreciate that.
All right, Jason, thanks for hanging out, brother.
No worries. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.